Today is Mother's Day, the day when families pay special tribute to their moms in various ways. Now, under normal circumstances, you might take your mom out to dinner or buy her a special gift. But now, no doubt, this year it's going to be a bit more difficult to do the usual type of Mother's Day niceties. It's forcing us to be a bit more creative. I'd say the last 8 weeks have shut our lives down as we normally know them, and moms and dads have been tasked with homeschooling, cooking 3 meals a day, cleaning more than usual, and trying to work from home. So let's look at some of the ways we have all behaved during our world pandemic. Maybe your kids dressed up. Maybe they destroyed the toy room. Maybe they were running around the house going crazy, and you were saying, please, please, when will this end? I hope you identified with some of those slides, but now obviously I'm past the raising kids phase of my life, but really being a mother, it doesn't ever stop. It goes on forever, just in different stages. When asked to speak on this Mother's Day, I pondered this topic for quite a while and decided that I would speak about what I know best, being a mom of 3, a grandmother of 8, or a BB as I'm called for grandmother. We have 8 grandchildren and we have one on the way, and a wife of a minister. Like you, we've had many grand times along the way with some not so good times. But together, our family has survived and we've flourished. I'm going to back up a little bit and start from the beginning before kids came on the scene in our life. I met AC in college, and he asked me out on our first date. He didn't say where we were going, what we were doing, for that matter, even what to expect. So Friday night came and I got all dolled up, in my outfit. It took a little bit of extra time getting ready. Looking forward to a fun evening, and AC came, picked me up on the college campus in his Ford LTD. He was a perfect gentleman, opened my car door, still didn't say where we were going. And as we were leaving, just pulling out of the college campus in Tulsa, he said, by the way, I thought we'd go to the airport tonight and witness to people. I said, what? Seriously? Yeah, we did it. He took me to the airport, strangers all over the place, and he said, I'd like to see if you can share your faith. So I did it. I mean, what are you supposed to say? You're put on the spot. So we shared our faith with total strangers. Now, I'm sure that they thought we were some kind of a lunatic hippie because this was in the 70s, and sharing your faith sometimes on the street corner was not an uncommon thing that you would see as you pass by. But nonetheless, that's what we did on our first date. From that point on, I knew that if I married this man, my life would never be dull, that it would be full of adventures, and it was just actually the beginning of 49 years of a wonderful adventure. The very first church we pastored was in western Oklahoma. Now, this was a very small, tight-knit community. We had been there probably maybe 2 months, and a very prominent, influential man in the community died, and he was a Methodist, so they asked Adrian to do the funeral, and they asked 2 other ministers to join him. So Adrian gets ready, and he goes down to the church, and he calls me, and he says, Bev, can you come down to the church and sing in the choir? He said, the church is packed, but there aren't very many people in the choir, and so we need somebody else to help sing. I said, sure, no problem. Now remember, we were in college. This was a student pastorate. I was 21 years old, and it was 1971. So I put on white go-go boots that came up to my knees. I put on a mini skirt, navy blue, and a white bodysuit that was very tight. So I get ready and I go down to church, I walk down the aisle, like, hi everybody. And I walk up on the stage and I walk behind AC, who's sitting on the platform, and out of the corner of his mouth, he says, Bev, what in the world do you think you're doing? And I was like, what? This is normal. Well, that was the last time he ever asked me to sing in the choir or asked me to do anything in the church that I was not prepared to do. After that experience, we decided that we needed to get some boundaries in our marriage and discuss what we were both willing and not willing to do. For one, as I said, AC never asked me to sing in the choir, and I don't play the piano, so the typical minister's wives things were checked off our list. We agreed that I would do things in the church that I felt the Lord was calling me to do. We began praying for the children that we did not have yet, that God would bless their lives, that we would be able to be parents and raise our kids in a well-balanced Christian home. We wanted our home to be a joyous home, filled with love and hospitality and encouraging words, and we prayed that daily for 6 years before our first child was born. And oh, what a joy when our first baby came. Scott was born in Wilmer, Kentucky, and it was a huge celebration. The guys at seminary all came over to the house, and all the guys celebrated. And in fact, Daryl Cates, who now goes to our church here at New Covenant, was one of the first guys over to the house with a baby present for Scott. It was a delightful time, and it was filled with excitement and new adventures. I had barely gotten into the routine of being a new mom, and it was Mother's Day. As a new mom, and I was doing all the new things that new moms do, enjoying every minute of it, but also feeling just a bit tired. So when the first Mother's Day rolled around, I didn't want any special gift. All I wanted was just a couple hours of uninterrupted sleep. But because we were in seminary, AC was studying for final exams, and so I thought to myself, okay, he's not going to be able to take care of the baby, but I can do this. I can make do. I can be creative. We were living in student housing, and it was a duplex, and so we shared the backyards with the duplex right behind us. So I went out, and I put blankets over the clothesline. I got the baby pack and play. I set it up under the clothesline. I put the baby in it so the baby wouldn't get, sunburned because I had the blankets on the top. I got a lawn chair, put on my bathing suit, and laid out in the sun for a couple hours. And let me tell you, it was delightful. It was wonderful. So basically, that was my first Mother's Day. Mother's Day number 1, check. Then joy number 2 arrived, and Sarah was born, and she was a spunky little thing, a social baby, and she loved people. And 2 years later, we had another beautiful addition to our family when Stephanie was born, and she was the direct opposite of Sarah. She was independent, she did her own thing, she didn't want anybody fussing over her, and maybe that's just the qualities of a third child, I don't know. But our family was now complete. Check. We were elated. It was definitely a really, really busy time of life, but we felt so blessed. It was hard work, and it was difficult at times. But now we added another sentence to those prayers that we prayed before the kids were born. We said, Lord, help me get through this day without losing it. Our home was filled with activities, and as the kids grew older, neighborhood kids chose our home to be the go-to place, probably because we were one of the few families on the block that had a cabinet full of junk food. Amidst all of this joyous, incredible season of our life, I was lamenting that I no longer was involved in Bible studies or being at the church for different events. And I thought, Lord, what am I supposed to do in this phase of my life? I'm busy raising kids, which is absolutely a great, great responsibility, and I enjoy it. But I long for more of you, but I don't know how to do that. And as I was listening to the Lord one day, he said, Bev, you know what? You have the greatest opportunity of all times. Just begin with your kids. Teach them and teach other kids about me. Use this time of your life to pour yourself into your kids and the kids of the church you serve. And so it began. With the help of Christ, we started a children's church ministry. And after a few Sundays, children's church was packed. We even had people in the community that would go around and round up those kids that didn't have a church, and they would bring them to church. I ended up teaching my kids and kids in the community about Jesus. And at the same time, I was growing in my own faith because I was reviewing and studying the Bible. To this day, our own grown children talk about the stories and the songs that they learned in children's church, of the crazy things we did, the special events on Christmas and Mother's Day and Father's Day, the many action songs we sang. So children's church really became my mission, my calling, or my spiritual gift. In all the churches we served, it wasn't singing in the choir with my go-go boots on or playing the piano. We learned that in our very first church, that was not my calling. Every church AC was assigned to, I started a children's church. When we came to New Covenant, we actually started a children's church in the Heart Center. Perhaps some of you watching today were part of that children's church 25 years ago. God took me at a place in my life and used me to bring kids closer to Him. How really grateful I am that I was able to listen to God during that time. Now, because our home was a hangout place, I cooked a lot, and I was sure there was always homemade snacks and meals for everyone. That's kind of when I realized that God was using another gift in my life, the gift of hospitality. The more the merrier. Lots of home-cooked meals, snacks, and a fun environment came natural to us. Perhaps it was just because I was raised on a farm, where we were constantly having guests staying at our house. I had 20 cousins that converged on our farm every summer. They slept on the floor. They slept on tents on the yard. During the day, we played till we were exhausted. And my mother always had homemade breads, cakes, pies, cookies, cinnamon rolls, and always 3 hot cooked meals a day. I don't know how she did it. It was a home filled with laughter, and we were hard workers because we had a dairy farm, but it was always full of fun. My parents instilled in me at an early age that having a warm, welcoming home was at the very heart of Christ's ministry. Every time our guests would leave the farm, my dad would gather us together in a circle. We'd hold hands, and he would pray a blessing over us, that God would keep us, that we would be safe, that we would be protected until we could meet again. Every time we were home, every time guests were at our house, he prayed that prayer. AC and I have tried to follow that same example of praying over our guests when they leave our home, or praying over our family when they're traveling back home from our house. We tried to be hospitable, to have people over, to cook, sit around the table, and get to really know people. We wanted to know the parents that our kids hung around with. We wanted to know the kids better that our kids hung around with. We wanted to be able to do fun and crazy things with them as a family and include the neighborhood kids in it. We enjoyed each other, and we enjoyed those that hung around us. But most of all, we prayed for them. Now, when I was looking at this talk, I thought, parenting is hard at times. It's definitely hard. You're juggling a mountain load of responsibilities. And you know what? You wouldn't be a mom if you were not losing it from time to time. But I have good news for you. God is a powerful God, and His forgiveness is immense. And His love for each of us is more than we can possibly imagine. Sarah reminded me of an incident when I totally lost it. It's not one of my finer moments, but it happened. So I'm going to share it with you. It had been one of those days, and I was totally spent. I was all used up. And then to top it all off, the dog pooped and peed in the house. And that was it. That was the last straw. I threw the dog outside. I grabbed one of the kids' baseball bats and I chased the dog around the backyard, all the time yelling at the top of my lungs. Luckily, the dog could run faster than I did, and no doubt he was probably thinking, what in the world has happened to Mom? The kids stood on the patio, and their eyes were bulging out of their sockets. It definitely wasn't a fine moment. But now, to be clear, I love animals. I was raised on a dairy farm, and we had all kinds of animals while our kids were growing up. We had dogs and cats, a rabbit or two, parakeets, you name it. Our family made a loving home for all the animals. But for some reason, that particular day, I totally melted. After my rant, of course, I felt better. The dog was back in the house unharmed, but the image my kids just witnessed wasn't the best. Then there was one of those mom moments where you have to apologize and try to explain why Mommy acted crazy for a bit. And you should never do what you just witnessed Mommy doing. It was hard, it was difficult to explain, but it happens. Moms do lose it from time to time. We get tired, we get exhausted, we get overwhelmed because the job demands more at times than we think we're equipped to handle. There were times that I used to pray a prayer that I would just maybe get like a bad cold and a little touch of pneumonia so that I could just be sick enough to slip into the hospital. They'd put me in a hospital bed and I could sleep for 3 days. Can any of you relate? I used to pray that prayer. Several times, AC and I would get so busy with our schedules that we would forget whose turn it was to pick up the kids from school, and we thought it wasn't our turn, so we're not going to go today. It has to be his turn. And the kids ended up in aftercare with a rather not so nice phone call to the parents, that meaning us, from the school principal. Lives are full, and parents aren't perfect. Forbes magazine every year does a study on what moms are actually worth and all that they do in their workplace, which is the home. First, Forbes broke down motherly duties into the following categories, and here's just a few of what they've tagged as being a mom's job. Academic advisor, accountant, art director, athletic director, dietitian, event planner, executive housekeeper, interior designer, janitor, laundry manager, network administrator, photographer, plumber, psychologist, recreational therapist, social media therapist. And for the last 8 weeks, I'd like to add, you were the protector of the COVID for your children, and you taught all subjects that school demanded. Then Forbes studied how many hours a week moms work in these categories and what the family would have to pay for outsourcing these duties. So here's what it said. The stay-at-home mom should make an annual salary of $178,201 annually, based on a 40-hour per week base pay plus 54.7 hours a week of overtime. Now, as many of us did, we worked outside the home when we had children. So they did another survey. If a mom works outside the home, what should she then get for just being a mom duties at home when she gets home? So they said this, just for a mom role, you should earn $66,969 based on 40 hours of motherly duties and 17.9 hours per week in overtime. That's a lot. The article concludes with this statement. The breadth of mom's responsibilities is far beyond what most workers could ever experience day to day. Imagine if you had to attract and retain a candidate to fill those roles. The roles of mothers has always been over and above what seems an impossible task. Let's look at the Bible. Let's look at what it says in Proverbs 31, beginning with verse 15. She gets up while it is still dark. She provides food for her family. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her task, and she sees that her trading is profitable and her lamp does not go out at night. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. Then verse 24 goes on to say, she makes linen garments and sells them. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the reward she has earned, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate. Wow. When I read that scripture, I think, that's amazing. Being a woman and a wife wasn't a fairy tale in biblical times either, and neither it is today. It's hard, it's difficult, and oftentimes it goes unappreciated. But let me give you a bit of great news. If you are a mother, someday you could be a grandmother or a BB, as I'm called. And let me tell you, this is one of the greatest adventures. And God knew what he was doing when our later stages of parenting, he provided grandchildren to bless our life. Before our grandkids were born, we once again talked about what we wanted to be as grandparents. We prayed that God would bless our grandchildren's lives, that he would show us, AC and I, how to be good grandparents, that he would guide us as we begin navigating a new role in our life that we'd never experienced. We talked at great length about what kind of grandparents we wanted to be and what we didn't want to be. We talked about things we wanted to teach them, activities we wanted to experience with them, and we are beyond blessed. I'm telling you, we pulled out all the stops when the grandkids arrived. Grandparenting is a whole nother ballgame wrapped up in the biggest bundle of joy anyone could ever experience. It is, to us, it is delightful. We established a few boundaries with their parents before they could establish boundaries with us. The toys at Pops and BB's house were not to be duplicated at their own home. Pops and BB's is a special place with special toys. We do crazy things. We put cardboard boxes on the staircase to make indoor slides. We make obstacle courses throughout the house. We have Pops and BB camp in the summer. We stay up past midnight, watching movies and playing games. As the kids got older, we taught them this saying, what happens at Pops and BB's house stays at Pops and BB's house. They don't have to tell their parents when they get home what they did. We spoil them. We do adventures that their parents don't have time to do. We take road trips with them. They invite their friends to come to Pops and BB's to spend the night at our house. We buy them crazy stuff. We put on plays where we dress up and we ride bikes. We spend time at the farm together. We're just building memories. This is the big reward of putting all of those years into parenting. And AC and I love it. We try to never say no when asked if we can take care of the grands. It is a pure joy and delight. Grandparents, you probably know what I'm talking about. Grandkids add that spark back into our life. They fill the house with energy and excitement, and they leave a complete mess when they leave our house. But do we care? No, because houses can be easily cleaned and messes are expected. A quick look at our culture today shows that idealized images of motherhood are actually inaccurate. It isn't a fairy tale experience, and Scripture reveals the same. In Scripture, we learn that Hannah was left childless and widowed at a very young age. Ruth was left childless at a very young age. And Rachel, Hannah, and Sarah were infertile. Eve and Mary lost sons under terrible circumstances, and the prodigal son acted with terrible disrespect toward each of his parents. Scriptures tell stories of women, just like we have in our church. Women in diverse life circumstances, sometimes thriving, sometimes coping, and sometimes feeling like they are going under, and sometimes they're full of joy and excitement. The fairy tale of marriage and motherhood is just that. It's a fairy tale. In real life, it can be messy and hard, and the job is never ending. But remember this: God doesn't call you to be a perfect mother or a perfect parent or even a perfect grandparent. Instead, He calls you to walk with your eyes and your heart tuned in on Him. He wants us to be tuned in to Him, praying for our kids daily, asking the Lord what He wants you to do. Where should you be connected in the church that you attend? Basically, He just calls us to lean on Him, to His perfection. I like to remember that it is not by our might nor by our power, but by His Spirit, declares the Lord. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. Enjoy your special day. Celebrate who you are and who you are with Christ in your family.